the one and only podcast by a blind wrestling fan.
Wrestling in the dark!
Hey up guys, welcome to another episode of WiTD. This time we're here to talk about NXT Takeover Portland, and what a show that was. It's not a hot take to come out of a takeover and be like, well, that was the best show that I've seen in a while, probably since the last takeover, especially if you're as big of an NXT mark as I am. They always have such a high level of intensity, the matches are always great, they always manage to throw a couple of curveballs, surprises that you just didn't see coming at you, and this pay-per-view was not an exception to that rule. There was at least a few things that happened that I was like, well, I didn't see that coming, but I'm okay with it anyway. So let's get to what actually happened. The show kicked off with Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic for the NXT North American Championship, and I was really excited about this, just like everyone else was. These two are two of the most over guys on the brand that just shouldn't be able to do the stuff that they could do. This could easily have been a cruiserweight match. They were just throwing each other around, throwing themselves around, testing the strength against each other, and it was just fun to watch. I can't help but mark for Dominik Dijakovic. Since he sent me those descriptions of what he looks like, what his ring gear is like, his entrance, how he moves in the ring, I can't help but just mark for the guy because it's so easy to picture his matches, and that made this match just great. Both of them looked amazing after this because, well, they always do when they face each other, but this match was just another one of those times where they put everything in there and both come out looking great. I love how they play up the fact that they just both really respect each other, as well as having this intense rivalry. Keith Lee was just catching Dijakovic every time he tried to do a diving move. There was one point where Dijakovic dived to the outside, Keith Lee caught him in the powerbomb position and then tried to powerbomb him on the apron, but Dijakovic managed to avoid that. There was quite a few things. Now, I had problems later on in the night. My Gmail crashed, it deleted all of my notes, so I am just going off memory on this, which is why there's so many Dijakovic things that I'm going to bring up. But at one point Keith Lee just like pounced him so hard that Dijakovic hit his head on the turnbuckle. There was multiple times where they were trying to suplex each other. My favourite spot of the match, and probably one of my favourite spots in a while, was Dijakovic managing to get an avalanche feast your eyes. Now, I wouldn't have known what a feast your eyes even looked like if it wasn't for the fact that Dijakovic had sent me those descriptions. So again, that just made me mark for him all the more, and I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh, it's over. There's an avalanche Spanish fly. Keith was hitting strikes and chops that just sounded like whip cracks. At one point he did the big show shush the crowd and then chop your opponent thing. He hit a grizzly magnum at one point that sounded like a chair shot. It was nasty. And then there was an avalanche Spanish fly. Dijakovic kicked out of like 2 spirit bombs. In the end, Keith Lee ended up hitting the Big Bang Catastrophe and picking up the win from that. But it was just so much fun. The crowd was into it. They were brawling on the outside at points, inside, up on the ropes, down in the middle, just everywhere they can. They're just taking it everywhere. Dominik Dijakovic was just diving round. I love at one point he managed to get Keith Lee down. He steps over him and the crowd's booing him, and it just goes from this, they're booing him because he's like being disrespectful to Keith Lee, and then he hits a corkscrew moonsault and everyone's cheering, and it was just an amazing transition from the crowd from like boo, fuck you, to like, oh, that was great, I really enjoyed that. But I just thought it was an intense opening to the show that is definitely worth a watch. I didn't feel like I missed out on anything despite not being able to see what actually happened, because the 3 commentators on the NXT commentary team work so well to complement each other. If Morrow misses something, Nigel will bring it up. Beth will give you physical descriptions of the emotional beats of what they've got facial expressions that they've got on, etc, etc, and it works absolutely perfectly. So I was really, really happy with this match. Next up was the first ever women's street fight on an NXT Takeover pay-per-view. Not quite sure how this hasn't happened yet, but this was definitely a good first match to have to set the precedent for women's street fight matches in the future. They set the bar high. I really, really enjoyed this match. It's Tegan Nox versus Dakota Kai. We go from the opening match where Dijakovic and Keith Lee have a lot of respect to each other to this match where Tegan and Dakota have no respect for each other whatsoever. They just hate each other. They're just looking to injure and end one another's careers, and this match did a great job of furthering the story, delivering what we wanted and what we needed to keep this going, because I didn't want the feud to be over in a one shot, and I think that with the ending that we got, I think that leaves it at a point where you're like, okay, why did that just happen? I love the dynamic that you have between Tegan and Dakota. You can hear it in the opening video package, the difference between the two of them. Tegan's this soft-spoken, bubbly, happy-sounding sort of woman, but at the same time she's had this fire lit underneath her because of what Dakota did. Someone that she believed was her best friend, on the level of a sister that she'd forged this emotional bond with because she went through the shared experience of the injury and coming back and just wanted to share that moment with Dakota. But Dakota went into business for herself and just decided Tegan wasn't a good friend, didn't have Dakota's best interest at heart, was just looking to injure her. She has this great line in the video package where she says, "I knew exactly what I was doing inside the War Games cage. I was looking to hear the snap of your knee." But it's not delivered with bile. It doesn't sound cool. It's cold and just completely calculating and icy, and I thought it worked really well. Between them, you've just got the two ends of the spectrum where Tegan's just this fire that burns and wants to get revenge, and then you've got Dakota who's just icy cold and looking to just take out her opponents. It was a really, really fun match that honestly, even with my notes, I probably wouldn't have been able to keep up with completely, never mind not having any notes at all. So I'm just, again, I've got to go off my memory, but it was a really fun match. Tegan come out, Dakota attacked her almost straight away. They brawled, Tegan sent Dakota through the barricade. Dakota managed to get a DDT on Tegan on the outside, rolled her in, then the match started. DK started going after weapons almost immediately, and the trash can ended up getting entered into the situation, and it was like the most used weapon out of everything in the match. I think they used probably one of everything, but at the same time that trash can got used a lot. Tegan hit an inverted senton with it at one point. They were talking about how painful it looked for Dakota and for Tegan, asking sort of why she'd put her body on the line like that, and playing up the fact that she's just way too emotional, which is basically the story of this match. They fought on the outside at one point. DK sent Tegan into the ring steps. She went for Clocker with a weapon, but Tegan just did a crossbody off the steps. There was a really cool bit where Dakota had some tape. She was looking to neutralise Tegan, looking to tape her up so she could do whatever she wanted. Tegan was trying to fight out of it, but Dakota was just booting her in the face to get her to let go. Eventually, out of desperation, Tegan goes for Dakota Kai's knee, and that's when this switch just flips, and she just starts like, that's it, I'm ending you now, I'm gonna injure you. And she gets a chain and she starts using it as a knuckle duster and attacking the knee. I just really thought it was a cool dynamic. She got a choke slam at one point, and then the finish of the match was really cool. She hit a Shiniest Wizard, but she doesn't go for the cover. She just stands there and she's like, I'm not done, I'm going to end you. And she gets Dakota on the table and she's gonna set something up. Commentary is talking about how if she does this, she's going to have crossed a line, and I'm like, what is she doing? And then we get this entrance music, and Raquel Gonzalez comes out, and she just lays out Tegan, puts her through the table, and Dakota Kai picks up the win. Commentary also plays up the fact that DK doesn't know what just happened. Like, she's confused as to why Raquel Gonzalez has done this as well, and I just think that that's great. They both let loose on each other with this, and this was just the taster. I think I would love to see this end up as a cage match at Takeover Tampa, especially if we're going to have Raquel Gonzalez as DK's little hench buddy, thug kind of woman. I don't know what she's going to be doing or what her motivation is, but if she's going to be getting involved, then that actually creates quite a good reason to have a cage match, because you've got Candice and Raquel that are both getting involved, so they just want to do the cage to make sure that no one can get at them. And in my opinion, I just can't complain about that, because I think that these two would have a really, really good cage match. It was a damn fun match. I definitely recommend a watch. Like I said, I haven't got anywhere near amount of the detail in this that I usually would, just because I'm going off memory, but I had a lot of fun with this, and there was a few times where I thought Dakota was going to win clean. There was a few times where I thought Tegan was going to win. When she hit that shiniest wizard, I was like, yes, it's over, and then when she didn't go for the cover, I was like, no, Tegan, oh, what are you doing? You're going to cost yourself the match now. And she did. Oh, she did. But it was a great match anyway. The Prince, Finn Balor versus Johnny Gargano is next, and I loved this match. It was really hard to keep up with. In the early moments, it was just catch-as-can style wrestling back and forth, each guy trying to find the advantage. But later on, it evolved more into a true Johnny Gargano, this match will never end, back and forth bonanza type deal. It was so much fun though, because the crowd was a massive part of this for me. They were so split, and it created this dynamic sort of electric atmosphere that was really, really engaging. There was like dueling chants for Balor and Gargano, but then there was, at one point, there was a three-way dueling chant for like Balor, Gargano, and then both these guys, and no one could decide who they wanted to get behind. It's really interesting that Gargano is the heart of NXT in ways, as well as being one of the heroes of the Full Sail crowd, but they always just get behind someone else. They always manage to find ways to support his opponent. Even when he was going against Adam Cole, people were cheering for Cole, and now they're cheering for Balor, and I think that it's just really interesting that he is a real hero of the Full Sail crowd, but they never get fully behind him. They never really, except for when it was Ciampa, I guess. When he was going against Ciampa, most people were giving Ciampa heat for it, but these days it's just a split reaction, and I love that. I love that Balor gets that reaction as a returning hero. Excuse me. I love his attitude, the way it's changed. I love how his physicality, you can tell that it's changed from the way that it sounds, the way he sounds when he's doing moves, and the noises that he makes, and they're all guttural and vicious sounding. And it's just funny because, as you know, I like putting NXT heels in thug gimmicks, and you've got Undisputed Era that are like the rogue street thugs that they're going to lend you money, and then when you don't pay them, they're going to come and beat you up for it. Angel Garza is the guy that you're going to take a hit out on. When you go and try and do the hit, he's going to be waiting in a darkened room pointing a pistol at you like, I knew you were coming. Balor is like the old mob boss that got locked up for a stretch, and he kept his head down, just biding his time, and then he gets released, and he goes and he finds out that the city's just been populated by young boys that think that they can be gangsters, and they have no respect for the old ways of how things were done. Now he's just got to go and clean the city up and reclaim his place as top mob boss or whatever. It's just the cool, intense attitude that he puts forward now is so engaging, and I never felt like that about Finn Balor before. I liked his moveset, but in terms of his character, I just didn't think it was there, and now I see it. I really do. Like I said, I've not got many. Well, I haven't got any notes for this part of the show because Gmail decided to delete it on me for some reason, but these are the things that I can remember. At one point, Gargano nailed Balor with a spear off the apron. He tried to John Woo dropkick Balor through the barricade, but Balor answered with a sling blade. This was something that he was doing throughout the match periodically, just hitting the sling blade counter and then climbing back on top for a bit before Johnny would shut him down. At one point, Johnny went for a dive. Balor caught him, goes for the 1916, but Gargano fights out, slings Bella into the ring steps and then hits a rolling cannonball or a tumbleweed senton, depending on whether you're Morrow or Nigel, because both of them said different things. There was just back and forth stuff that I struggled to keep up with, because it was like at one point there was a slingshot spear attempt which missed. Balor goes for 1916, can't get that, hits a sling blade, goes for coup de grace, it misses and gets hit with a slingshot spear anyway. And then there was this real back and forth, didn't know what was going to happen bit where Balor hit a sling blade, went for the shotgun drop kick, Gargano nailed him with a super kick, so he got a sling blade again, then the shotgun drop kick, went for the coup de grace, missed, got locked in the Gargano escaped from that, got a double stomp, went for 1916 again, got locked in the Gargano escape again. And then eventually they spilt to the outside. Balor actually got the John Woo dropkick into the barricade. He was going to try and do something with the announce table. He slung Johnny into the announce table. Then they were fighting on there, and he ended up hitting a shotgun drop kick off the table to Gargano. Thought that was really good. And then on the inside it was a 1916 and a coup de grace that picked up the win, and I was not shocked. I thought that was how it was going to go, but at the same time I didn't see the impact that this was going to have later on in the show, which I will get to more in detail then. But looking back at it now, it's quite interesting to think that people would be like, well, what's next for Gargano now? But this has been used as a stepping stone to push Gargano in the direction that he went at the end of this match, and I just found it really, really interesting. I enjoyed the finish to start with, but then with hindsight at the end of the show, I was like, okay, well, I'm really interested now in that finish. Is that what's going to motivate Johnny going forward? Burp just absolutely forcing its way out then. I didn't even know it was coming until it forced its way out. And that's my phone shouting at me, everything's going to shit. But yeah, this was a great match. I really enjoyed it, and it was probably better than I thought it was going to be. I struggled to keep up in places, but again, would definitely recommend a watch of this, because I'm sure with eyes, this is probably a damn good match. The NXT Women's Championship match is next. Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. It's brutal strength versus athletic prowess. I just love that both of these characters are presented as so tough. Rhea managed to dethrone Shayna, which is an act which speaks for itself, and Bianca had such an amazing few months with her performance in the War Games match and in the Royal Rumble match. She's just really turned me around on her. I wasn't a fan of her last year, still not a major fan of her mic work, but she really has turned me around with the way she presents herself as a character in the ring and her moveset and the way commentary puts her over. So I was just really looking forward to this. I do like that because the story was Bianca being overlooked by Rhea with the Charlotte situation, there was just this small element of believability for me where I could suspend my disbelief for long enough to believe that Bianca Belair was going to win this match. I never really thought that Ripley was going to lose, but at the same time, there was this small kernel in my brain of, right, well, they could have Bianca win here and then have a rematch at Takeover Tampa and Rhea wins there, and then it's this big story about Rhea reclaiming the Women's Championship and now she's facing Charlotte at WrestleMania, and I just thought maybe they'd want to do that and add a wrinkle to it, but they didn't, and I don't mind that either because it actually worked out really, really well. I love that Beth always puts over how much she looks forward to these contests. At the beginning of the match, she was just saying how much she's been looking forward to it, and her investment in the women's division really allows me to see it through her eyes and empathise with how proud she is, and it just really, really works for me with NXT and Beth as the heart of it. In the early moments, they're just testing the strength. Bianca gets a shoulder barge and a waistlock takedown, but her advantage doesn't last long before Rhea gets back in the game, starts chopping her and talking trash. Bianca gets a standing moonsault, she goes for a suplex, but Rhea lands on her feet, so Bianca just nails her with a jackhammer and slaps on the full Nelson. Rhea manages to fight back into it, she gets a back body drop, delivers knees, a snapmare, a dropkick, and finally an electric chair facebuster. She gets the mare's grasp, but Bianca manages to fight out of that, send her into the turnbuckle and lay her out with a spine buster for a 2 count. They're just battering each other in the face at this point, but Bianca manages to get a braid whip which gives her control for a split second before she goes for a handspring moonsault, but Rhea gets the knees up. Rhea goes for the riptide, Bianca goes for the KOD. Rhea gets a boot to the face, Bianca just spears her in return. Rhea manages to block a second braid whip, but she eats a massive back body drop. Morrow plays up how high she went, and I assume it sent her to the outside because then Bianca hit a tope over the top rope. In the closing moments, Bianca manages to block a sunset flip, but then she eats a riptide for the loss. Rhea doesn't get long to celebrate her attention though, because Charlotte comes out of nowhere and just lays her out before she gets on the mic and just delivers one of her typically boring one-liners. I'd never liked Charlotte on the mic. She's just like, "Hey, I thought about it. I'll see you at WrestleMania." It's just so boring and robotic. I loved this match, thought it was really back and forth. Like I say, I loved that I could buy into Bianca possibly winning this match and not particularly knowing where it was going. I really don't enjoy matches when it's for sure who's going to win. Like, I know for a fact that this person's going to win. I usually think that, but at the same time I really enjoyed the Keith Lee Dominic Dijakovic match, and I knew that Keith Lee was going to win that, so maybe if they do it well enough in ring I don't care, but usually I find it boring if it's a dead cert who's going to win. But just the story of Bianca being overlooked I really bought into, and I just thought that it could go either way. I just love that Bianca didn't look weak in her loss here at all. She can easily come back and challenge for the title at any time, and Rhea gets another good defence under her belt. And I just love that in the end the NXT crowd ends up booing Charlotte, because that's what I feel should always happen. I really didn't think that I'd be saying it, but my least favourite match of the night was probably the NXT Tag Team title match between the Broserweights and Undisputed Era, which I can't believe that I'm saying, because the Broserweights have been one of my favourite things about NXT the last couple of weeks. Pete and Matt take a road trip was hilarious, and I'm a massive mark for the Undisputed Era. O'Reilly and Fish as a team I find really cool, but this was just a little bit hard to keep up with. Look, multi-man matches and tag matches are just harder to keep up with, and that's just a fact and just something that I have to deal with, because it's hard to keep up with the action. And even if the commentary are doing a great job, which I think Morrow maybe could have done a little bit better, especially with the closing moments, I still wouldn't have been able to keep up as well, I don't think, just because there's so many people switching in and out with tags and tandem offense, etc. It's just hard to keep up with, and it does bum me out, I'm not going to lie, because I don't really usually get this feeling from NXT where I'm like, oh well, I feel like I missed out on that, and unfortunately I did a little bit with this. But let's get to what happened. It's back and forth in the early moments, but eventually Pete gets on the offensive. He tries to destroy O'Reilly's digits like he does, and he doles out X-plexes. But eventually Undisputed Era manage to take control. They have him isolated for a while until he gets the hot tag to Riddle. Riddle comes in with that rapid fire offense. He gets an exploder suplex, a pair of Brotons, a PK, some sort of buster, and a GTS into an Everest style German suplex, which I'm not gonna lie, sounds really cool. He hits O'Reilly with a flash knee strike a little later on. O'Reilly answers with a rolling forearm, so he just gives him another flash knee strike. Pete tags back in, he gets a double wrist lock and applies the body scissors. O'Reilly fights out, gets an axe kick. Pete goes for an armbar and Broserweights lock in duet submissions. Undisputed Era reverse that, get stereo submissions of their own, but the Broserweights fight out. We get this weird call from Morrow where he calls it an avalanche suplex by Kyle O'Reilly, and I wasn't quite sure why he called it an avalanche suplex, because I've never heard it called that before. It's just always been a superplex. I assume it must have been some sort of variant, but it just felt so jarring because I was like, what? I've never heard it called an avalanche suplex ever. O'Reilly gets a King Kong knee drop and applies a leg drop. A leg lock, sorry, not a leg drop. It's just because I said the King Kong knee drop. Pete accidentally wipes out Riddle. Riddle accidentally wipes out Pete. And Undisputed Era get chasing the Dragon, but Pete kicks out. And then the closing moments just felt a little bit disappointing. It's just one of those things where eventually the action gets too fast to call, and Morrow just gives up and starts just screaming tandem offense, and that's why they work so well as a team, and stereo this and stereo that. And it was just a little bit annoying because when the finishing sequence happened, they just never called what happened. In the replay they said it was stereo strikes by the Bruiserweights, but that's such a broad term. It's like, you know, Pete could have hit like a chop and Riddle hit a flash knee strike or any combination of that, and it's just like, well, why have this much detail in some of the other parts, and then when you get to the important part, that's when you drop the call. It's like watching a film and it just ends and you're like, well, it didn't end properly, that had no resolution, because I just felt like it was just over and I had no idea what happened. So I did feel a little bit pissed off, but at the same time I might have just been a little bit less forgiving because of the mess up with my notes which happened directly before this match. The main event, which was the NXT Championship match between Adam Cole and Tommaso Ciampa, was pretty much as good as I thought it was going to be. I don't really expect anything less from one of these Adam Cole Championship matches. It's the same thing as he had with Johnny last year, where it just got to the point where I didn't know he was going to win, I didn't know what it was going to take to end the match, and I was just absolutely drawn into it. Every beat I was just like, oh, and then the ending was great and there's so much to talk about, so let's get through it and see what actually happened in the match. Ciampa gets a pair of shoulder tackles in the early moments. He sends Cole to the apron and tries for the Willow's Bell, but he doesn't get it. They fight on the outside for a bit. Ciampa sends Cole into the ring post, slings him over the announce table, nails him in the jaw with a kick. Commentary play up on how brutal this looks and say that Cole looks like he's out on his feet. Ciampa goes for an enziguri, but Cole reverses that into a wheelbarrow suplex, which sees Ciampa land with his back and spine area on the announcer's desk. This looks so brutal that Morrow is temporarily struck dumb, and even he can't believe that he's speechless, which he remarks upon. Cole, seeing the chance to gain the advantage, starts zeroing in on the back and the spine and the neck, and tries for a sunset bomb but doesn't get it and gets a backstabber instead. A little later on, Ciampa gets a torture wrap bomb, and Beth plays up how these sort of moves are going to be putting pressure on the neck and the spine, and how every time he does something like this it's going to make it harder to continue. Cole blasts Ciampa with a knee strike and gets an Ushigoroshi at one point. He tries for an avalanche Panama Sunrise but doesn't get it because Ciampa reverses into an avalanche air raid crash, which Cole kicks out of. Cole then kicks out of a Project Ciampa. A little later on he gets a last shot, but Ciampa rolls out of the ring to avoid getting pinned. Cole goes out after him, so Ciampa just nails him with an air raid crash on the apron. Then they're fighting on the outside for a bit. Cole gets a Panama Sunrise off the announcer's desk, sends Ciampa into the ring, goes after him, but Ciampa fires up and gets the fairy tale ending, which Cole kicks out of again. And I was like, when is this going to end? Cole gets a crossface, which Ciampa fights out of. Cole rolls to the outside, and suddenly Roddy and the rest of the Undisputed Era are here to do what they do best, which is distract the ref so Cole can do his thing. They distract him for long enough that Cole nails Ciampa with a move. Ciampa kicks out and the crowd goes absolutely ballistic. Ciampa starts fighting back. He sends Cole into Fish and O'Reilly, gets a Willow's Bell on Roderick Strong and hits a corkscrew pescada. He eventually gets sent into the ref though, and that's just the cue that the Undisputed Era need to jump him. He doesn't give up. He gets a fairy tale ending and gets like a 14 count before the crowd give up on actually counting along with it. But this is where the twist in the tail comes in, because Gargano comes out, he attacks Ciampa, and that allows Adam Cole to retain the NXT Championship. And I was just like, oh my god, they've actually done it. They're going to tie up the loose end that's been bothering me for ages. Now, it's not a hot take to say I enjoyed this match. I don't really think I need to talk about any more about the action because it speaks for itself. It was a great back and forth match that was full of suspense, really fun, storytelling was great. But let's get to Johnny and Ciampa, because I sort of think that it's justified, because Ciampa gets injured after being a massive arsehole for ages. He gets injured and he goes off, and he gets to come back this mega baby face, and everyone's chanting "Daddy's home," and they're all getting behind him, which is natural because when someone gets injured and goes away and there's this legit chance that they might never wrestle again, people are always going to get behind them when they come back. But as a character, he comes back and he's okay with Johnny, and he's like teaming up with him with DIY, and in the back of my mind I'm like, I don't think that Ciampa and Johnny should be friends anymore. After what happened, I just don't think that they should get along, and it was sort of making me want it even more because you've got this Tegan Dakota storyline, and I'm like, man, I hope that nothing happens there to ruin that one, because they'll never tie it up. But they will, because they are, and they're tying it up nicely with Johnny presumably losing to Balor, and you know what happens when Gargano doesn't get what he wants, he turns heel until he gets what he wants. And I just think that it's really, really cool to see where they go from here. The fact that the roles are reversed and it's going to be Gargano as the heel and Ciampa as the face is really interesting. The fact that you can't really blame Gargano for what he's doing, because it's like, no, I haven't forgotten what you did, and I'm not just going to stand there and let you get the championship back, which is the thing that you fucked me over for in the first place. I just think that it's going to be a mad takeover Tampa, because I reckon this will end up in a fatal 4-way, because he'll have Cole come out on NXT, he'll be bragging about winning, Ciampa will come out and say you didn't beat me fair and square, Gargano will come out to talk trash, and then probably Balor will come out and be like, Gargano, what are you doing? I beat you, you get out of line, you go to the back of the line, I beat you, if anyone's next it's me, because Cole's beat Ciampa, Cole's beat you, and I beat you, so I should face Gargano next, and it'll just end up as a fatal 4-way, which I think will be a really, really amazing match to main event Takeover Tampa. Really, really looking forward to seeing where the twists in the story go with this one, and I'm actually really glad that they went with Cole retaining, because I do think that he deserves that longest reigning champion badge, and also him losing it at Takeover Tampa is just a much bigger moment than him losing it here. All in all then, I thought that this was a really solid takeover event, but I can't remember a time when I came out of a takeover like, well, that wasn't what I wanted, because they pretty much always give me what I want. Yeah, okay, there's been times where I haven't necessarily completely agreed with the booking decisions, but for the most part, in terms of the matches and the storytelling, it's just such a special time when it comes to wrestling. I can't wait for Takeover Tampa now after this, with the stories that are going forward. It's really hard to decide what I'd call match of the night, because it's really torn for me between the opening and the closing match. The one that I forgot about the most after the first viewing was Bianca and Ripley, but I actually went back and rewatched that this morning so I could get some notes on it, because I already had notes for the tag match and the main event. So I just went back and rewatched it, and I actually really, really enjoyed it on the rewatch. So maybe it was just bad placement the first time round, maybe I was just a bit burnt out from the matches that had come before it, but I actually found it really enjoyable on second viewing. Yeah, it's just torn between Keith Lee and Dijakovic and Adam Cole and Tommaso Ciampa, because I just don't know which one I prefer, so I'm just going to call it a tie. I want to give a big shout out though to Zigzag Punk on Twitter, because he actually accepted the WiTD challenge and he watched this main event with a blindfold to experience things the way that I experience it, and he has a Twitter thread up, so you should go and check him out. He's Zigzag Punk, and he actually talks about how he found the experience, and I actually really thought it was cool that he did that, Zigzag, because no one else has done that yet, and I think it's really, really cool, so big up to you. If you've got any thoughts on Takeover, I'm on Twitter at Mason_WITD, or you can leave them in the comments section. If you've enjoyed this episode of WITD, leave a like and subscribe if you feel that way inclined. I'm off, and you should have a good one.
Wrestling, 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 wrestling!